In today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit about drums. Now, drums can be the friend and the enemy of us beat makers. It's great collecting breaks and one-shots to use in our beats, but when they pop up in records that we're trying to sample and chop, they can be a bit of a problem.
You are so annoying!
So what I thought I'd do today is show you some techniques that will help you to mask out drum sounds and hide them so you can sample records that may have drums in them but still get good results. So I'm going to be using the SP404 again today. That is my main beat making weapon at the moment, but these techniques should apply to any machine, so if you're not on an SP404 Mark II, hopefully you can follow along anyway. Okay, so here we are at the machine, and the first thing that I want to talk about is actually a little contradictory to the point of this video, but it's more about prevention than cure. So my first advice would be to look for samples and sampling material that doesn't contain drums or percussion in the first place. That's really what you should be looking for when you're looking for good samples. But there's a whole spectrum of the amount of drums that can be in records that can go from anywhere from very, very loud to very, very soft. So you can still get away with using samples that have very soft drums. So I've got some examples here. So if you listen to that chop, there are drums in there, but they're very, very low in the mix. So with chops like that, and the techniques that I'm going to show you later in this video, you're probably going to be fine and be able to cover them, and your beats will sound like there's no original drums in there whatsoever. So yeah, a little bit contradictory to start with, but look for good material. That's the best way to get a cleaner sound, to get a sound without drums in it. Those are the type of samples you should be looking for in an ideal world. Okay, next is to choose your chops carefully. Now, some chops will have less drums in than others, and kind of like a big puzzle, trying to find the right chops and the right sounds to put together. So if you can utilize ones that have less drums in them, then that's a good route to go down if you're using a record that does have quite a lot of drums in the mix. So for example, again, I'll use this one that I've just been showing you. There's only one snare in that one really that stands out. Miss you so much. This third chop, for example, has a couple of drums in it. You can hear the kick and the snare in that one, so maybe that would be one to avoid. That sixth chop in particular has a kind of drum fill in it, so that will probably be one that I'd avoid as well, because there's just too much going on there that would clash with the drums that I'd want to use. You can just hear quite a lot going on. So that would be my second piece of advice. If you've got a record that does have drums in, after you've chopped it, try and find the chops that have the least amount of drums in them. That's going to be a big help. Okay, the third tip I'll offer is to use your own drums to layer over the drums in the sample. So again, I can use this one because this is actually perfect. The way I've chopped this record and repitched it, this is going to be the tempo of my beat. I miss you so much. I miss you so much. So those snares are actually hitting at exactly the same time that my snare that I'm going to lay over the top is going to hit as well, like this. I miss you so much. I miss you so much. So my snare is so powerful over the top there. That's not the final mix, it's quite loud, but you get the idea from that. That's going to completely cover and mask that drum that's in the original sample. I miss you so much. I miss you so much. So that is one way that you can approach samples that have drums in. You keep the rhythm of the original record and you layer your own drums over the top to mask them. So if I just do a quick example now, let's turn this down a bit because I was getting quite loud. I miss you so much. Miss you so much. Miss you so much. I miss you so much, miss you so much. I miss you so much. Okay, just a very basic drum example. It's really hard to do this from the position that I'm stood in, but you get the idea with that. Those drums are laying over the top of the sample and they're just covering all the original drums from that record really, really easily. And again, going back to the first point, it's because the drums in the record are quite soft as well. So the combination of those two things means that you can really hardly hear the drums in the record anymore once that's been done. Okay, my next tip is to use envelopes. Now I'm going to go across to a different bank for this so I can show you the difference. So if I go to sample 1 and go to envelope, you can see here that I've got a 0 envelope on the first one. If I go to the second, I've got 21, so it's quite big. So I'll show you the original sound of this chop. This is just a hypothetical example, but it really gets the point across. You can hear there at the start of the sample, there's a heavy kick. It's followed by a snare as well. There are other drums in this particular chop as well. But if you get a strong hit like that at the start of a chop, which is very, very common, you can adjust the attack envelope to cover it. So I'll show you the example that I've done here. If I go to the second one, I've got this envelope on it and you can hear the difference now. Okay, so the rest of the drums are obviously still there in that chop, but the first one isn't. And if a heavy kick is coming in over the top of that, let's just grab a heavy kick from somewhere.
A few moments later.
And there we go, we've made use of the envelopes there, and that's left a lot of space for your own kick to hit instead, and it's taken the kick out of the original sample as well. So just to show you the difference one more time. If I were to play my own kick with that, there is a bit of a clash going on there, but sometimes that can sound pretty good as well. But for this example, yeah, I've used the envelope. And you can really hear how much better that sounds with the second chop and the envelope on it than it does compared to the first one where the original kick sound is still in there. So that's a really, really useful one. I use that all the time on all my chops. It makes your chops sound buttery smooth, that tip as well. So as a habit now, I always tend to adjust the attack envelope on my chops. It's really, really useful and it's really easy to do on the SP404 Mark II. I wanted to do a couple of honourable mentions before this video was out, other techniques that you can use which unfortunately are not available on the SP404 Mark II. Why we still don't have sidechain, I'll never know, but yeah. Sidechain is the first one. So if you have a modern MPC, you might want to use something like Mother Ducker. If you don't know how to use that, I'm sure you'll be able to find a tutorial online for it. Basically what sidechaining does is reduce the volume of one thing when another thing hits. So if you sidechain a sample against a kick, for example, that's a very common technique in hip hop. Every time that kick hits, the volume of the sample will dip, and therefore that will hide those drums that are in the original samples. Another one, again, which isn't available on this unit and probably never will be, to be fair, is stem separation. Now I know that stem separation kind of divides the beat making community a little bit, but it is very useful for things like this. So if you have got access to stem separation, again, the modern MPCs have it. There's plugins available for DAWs that have it as well. You could utilize that and completely rip the drums out of a track and then you just have the sample. So I really wanted to mention those. I couldn't really demonstrate them for this video, but they are definitely very useful as well. So that's it for this one, guys, and that is the end of another week. It's Friday at the time of recording. I'm really looking forward to a break this weekend because I've just felt absolutely shattered all week. I don't know what it is, I just can't seem to shake it. I did a lot of running this week and a lot of filming, so maybe it was the combination of those two things. But yeah, super excited to have a chilled weekend and meet up with some friends. If there's any other tips that you can think of that help to remove drums or mask drums when you're making beats, please leave it in the comments below and help the community out. That would be greatly appreciated. Just one more thing, the sale on my shop is still on until the end of this month, so 20% off all my digital samples. Check out the links in the description. All the drums that I used in this video are from my packs, and they're an instant download after purchase. Keep making beats, and I'll catch you all again in the next video.